Hello everyone, good day. Wherever you're watching me from, you're welcome to my channel. This is Here's What View or Word for Word Talk, depending on where you're watching me from. It's good to have you. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to our channel. And also press your notification button so that whenever we're on, you'll be one of the first people to be notified. This is an update of Prince Harry and Meghan's situation that happened near collision accident or a catastrophic situation that almost happened with them, yesterday, I think yesterday evening, really. So this update that kind of have a different view from both the Harry and Meghan's and that of the New York police. But listen, they were the one, the car, they went through it. That's how I say it. But anyway, let me play for you and then let me know what you think about it. This relentless pursuit by paparazzi, it's really, really not healthy for anyone, This has been Harry's fear or concerns, because he doesn't want to have history repeat itself. And we're told that they were trying to avoid them being followed by the paparazzi. They didn't want them to know where they were staying or the hotel they were staying. So they were trying to avoid, take different routes in order to stop them following them, stop the paparazzi following them. And this went on for over 2 hours, I think, So this is an update. Let me hear you for yourself and let me know what you think about it. Do you think it's okay for them to be followed that way after all? That's what comes with being a celebrity. But at the same time, you think their life is most important. In all of this, their life is important than just being followed.
Bring you a little bit more on our breaking news this afternoon, the news involving Prince Harry, his wife Meghan, and Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland. We're hearing from Prince Harry's spokesperson that all three of them were involved in what the spokesperson is calling a near-catastrophic car chase involving paparazzi photographers. The incident happened after Meghan and Harry had attended an award ceremony in New York yesterday. The spokesperson saying, and I quote, "This relentless pursuit lasting over 2 hours resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD, New York Police Department officers." That is the quote from a spokesperson for Prince Harry in a short statement that has been released this afternoon. It was the first public engagement of Prince Harry and his wife Meghan in New York yesterday since the coronation of King Charles. The Duchess of Sussex in New York, appearing on the red carpet alongside her husband and her mother before receiving a Woman of Vision award at a gala ceremony. The Prince, of course, Prince Harry, involved in court action here in the UK against Mirror Group newspapers, and also another court case involving security arrangements for when he and his family visit the UK. But what we are hearing from Prince Harry's spokesperson is that there was an incident after that ceremony in New York on Tuesday that lasted over 2 hours and was near catastrophic in its consequences, a car chase involving multiple paparazzi photographers. It doesn't specify, but it may be that this happened after the ceremony last night, although it doesn't specify that. Just to bring you again what this short statement says. Prince Harry, his wife Meghan and her mother were involved in a near catastrophic car chase involving paparazzi photographers. The incident happened after Meghan and Harry had attended an award ceremony in New York. This relentless pursuit lasted over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. That is all the detail we have at the moment. No word as to how the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, or indeed Prince Harry's spokesman clearly wanting to highlight what had happened, particularly given the couple's narrative on press intrusion and standards that are not, in their opinion, upheld by certain areas of the press. Indeed, as I said, Prince Harry in the middle of a big High Court legal case brought alongside a number of other high-profile figures against the Mirror Group newspapers. That court case ongoing, the court hearing evidence from former journalists at Mirror Group newspapers today. Of course, we'll keep you updated on the course of that here on Sky News. But that breaking news involving the Duke and Duchess of Sussex involved in a near catastrophic car chase involving paparazzi photographers after they attended an award ceremony in New York yesterday. NYPD officers. So it seems like it was a relentless chase. But luckily, it seems that everyone, the couple, her mother-in-law and those involved in those near misses escaped unscathed. We await more detail on that. In the meantime, let's bring in our royal correspondent, Laura Bundog. Laura, as I've been saying, very little detail about what happened, but enough to give us a sense of how serious it was for the couple and Meghan's mother.
Yeah, I mean, the details we have are slim at the moment, but by the sounds of it, it was a pretty scary, frightening evening for the three of them. We know that they had been at this gala in Manhattan a little earlier in the evening. Meghan was picking up a Woman of Vision award for her work promoting women and girls. She'd been presented with the award by Gloria Steinem. She'd made a speech. Photos had been taken of them arriving, and then photos of them getting into what seemed to be a yellow taxi as they left the awards. Now, I don't know if it was at this point that the paparazzi started their chase. We simply don't have those details. But from what we've heard from this spokesperson's statement for the couple, saying that there was what's being described as a near catastrophic car chase involving paparazzi photographers. And of course, I mean, it goes without saying, some very frightening echoes, obviously, of what happened to Diana here. Clearly a very scary moment for the three of them in Manhattan. And something Harry has touched on, hasn't he? And in so many of his recent interviews he's given, something he's spoken about in his book as well, this horrible fear of being out with his mother in the car and just being chased by photographers, having to run red lights as they pursued her relentlessly. So, as I say, at the moment, the details of this particular incident, we don't know much more at the moment, but we do know that it was a relentless pursuit. It lasted more than 2 hours and seems to have resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers, and not just drivers, but pedestrians and police officers as well. That's according to the spokesperson for the couple. But when we get more details, obviously we'll update you.
Laura, this just gives us a sense of the appetite for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in tabloid terms, because, of course, I was just talking about the fact that this was the first public appearance of the couple since the coronation of King Charles. And the whole world wants pictures of them. They want to see what they're up to. So it harks back to that era that you mentioned. Prince Harry is so passionate about ending, of the tabloid culture, of the paparazzi. It seems that, that isn't dying away when it comes to this couple.
No, and mark my words, Prince Harry will be furious about this. He will be very, very angry. I mean, his distrust, his dislike of the tabloid press is well known. It's well documented. It's come up time and time again in the court cases he's pursuing at the moment. This is exactly the sort of situation he doesn't want. The couple live, believe it or not, a relatively secluded life where they live. It's outside, actually, even sort of the main city in LA. They shy away as much as possible from big events at the moment. But when they do come out, clearly, the photographers, the world's press, focus on them. And that is something that has always happened. And I think because we haven't seen so much of them recently, Harry flew in and then flew out again, didn't he, for the coronation? We barely saw him. He obviously wasn't there on the balcony. He didn't take part in any of the other events around the coronation. We simply saw him arriving at the service, attending the service, and then leaving straight after the service to head for the airport where he flew back to America. This is how they want it at the moment. So I think when we do see them together as a couple out in public, there is going to be this huge interest around it. And I think as much as they try and control the narrative and to try and, as much as possible, control the media around them, it seems that there has been this sort of relentless pressure to get the photos, given the limited opportunity there is to see them out in public together. I mean, they get sort of patched, don't they, in and out of restaurants occasionally, but this public outing is not something we see very often. And it's just a frightening sort of echo, as I say, of the sort of late night car chase through a busy city. And it seems that, there were crashes involving other cars, that pedestrians perhaps had to scramble out of the way. Even the police, who presumably were there trying to help them make their way through the chasing paparazzi, got caught up in all of this at the moment. But we sort of await more details at the moment. But it sounds like a very scary evening for Meghan and Harry, and Doria, who we understand was Meghan's mum, who was with them as well at the time.
And Laura, what Prince Harry has put out there in the public domain this afternoon feeds into the two court cases he's involved in the UK, one about phone hacking and the levels that he believes, the press go to gain access to his private life, but also the one about security and what kind of security he is given when he comes to the UK with his family. Obviously, that is going through legal proceedings at the moment. And when you look at what's just happened, or what Prince Harry's spokesperson is saying has happened, it's sort of, it feeds into that narrative from the prince as well. It's almost, him putting out this statement through his spokesperson and saying, look at what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting court cases is obviously Harry's sort of fight against the phone hacking cases. So there's a trial taking place at the moment involving Mirror Group newspapers. He's got similar actions that aren't quite at trial stage with the publishers of The Sun and the publishers of The Mail as well. And he's made it clear that he wants to change the media landscape. Now, of course, a lot of the phone hacking refers back to sort of practices that he's alleging were taking place a while ago. But I think this sense that he was fodder for the newspapers. They were pursuing him purely to sell their newspapers, purely for headlines, without any regard as to the impact it would have on him as a person. That is why he's taken this campaign and is taking it as far as he can. Don't forget, he's going to appear as a witness himself, isn't he, at the High Court in a couple of weeks' time. A really unusual step. And if you listen to the way some of the other witnesses have been grilled throughout this trial so far, it's a big thing to put himself through. But that such is the anger he feels clearly about the phone hacking, but also the wider issue of the sense that he was public property, that the media felt they could go to any extreme to chase him for a story, whatever that meant. But regarding this incident, clearly it followed this night out, this award ceremony in Manhattan. There are apparently pictures appearing on social media now. As I say, some of those images we were talking about showing Harry and Meghan and her mum Doria Ragland in a taxi, what looks like a yellow taxi in New York. And this idea that it was this near catastrophic car chase, the spokesperson saying it was at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi, a relentless pursuit that lasted over 2 hours and resulted in near collisions with other drivers, pedestrians, and as we were saying, also NYPD police officers as well.
Laura, let's just bring you the statement that was released by Prince Harry's spokesperson. We'll bring it to our viewers if you're just joining us wherever you are. The breaking news is that Prince Harry, his wife Meghan, and his mother-in-law Doria Ragland have been involved in an incident. The spokesperson saying last night the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms Ragland were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. NYPD, of course, the New York Police Department. Laura, it's short and to the point. And when I say to the point, as we've been discussing, Prince Harry will very much want to make his point where this is concerned. As you said, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex living away from the limelight in the main. We have seen some, ironically, paparazzi shots of them going into restaurants recently, but there's been such a huge appetite for the couple, especially since the King's coronation and Meghan's absence. She's been very quiet since the Prince, for instance, published his autobiography since the coronation. This has been her first big public outing.
I know, and I think that's very interesting looking at this. We really haven't heard or seen from Meghan. I mean, ever since, I think, the Netflix series came out, I think there was a sense perhaps that this was Harry's moment, that he had a memoir, a story to tell, that he had the subsequent interviews he wanted to give, he wanted to embellish, to be asked and talk more about the contents of his book. And clearly, I think the coronation, the couple felt, was the moment where Harry was there just for his father, that if Meghan had come, then there would be this media circus around her arrival that almost in a way I think should have been damned if she came, damned if she didn't, and perhaps it was simpler for Harry to come, to mark the occasion, to be there for his father, which we know would have meant a lot to the King, rather than have Meghan and Harry come and then all the questions or all the kind of coverage that it would have detracted, I think, away from the King's big moment there. And I think the fact we are now seeing Meghan out in public for the first time in a while at an awards ceremony shows just how much interest there is in the couple still, and in the fact that these presumably are American photographers pursuing them, and the sort of sense that they could try and control the media coverage as much as they want. It is just impossible, perhaps, in this day and age, that there are newspapers, there are magazines, there are all sorts of media outlets who will do what it takes to get a photo of the couple because we haven't seen them much. And I would be surprised if we don't hear from Harry or there isn't some sort of response, because, as I say, this is exactly what he's campaigning against, what he's spoken about at length in his biography and those interviews, the constant intrusion he felt growing up. I mean, when he had his mum with him, how he would be in the back of the car, she would be dodging the photographers that would inevitably follow them wherever they went. And then obviously growing up as a teen without his mum, feeling that his whole life was being exposed by a tabloid press that did anything to sell their newspapers. So we haven't heard from the Duke of Sussex, but I would expect there will be some sort of response following this. And we don't know how they are, we don't know where they are at the moment. So lots of unknowns at the moment, clearly. A different time zone in America as well. But it sounds like it was a frightening experience for them all.
Yeah, Laura, I'm sure we'll find out more details in due course. We just have that short statement from Prince Harry's spokesperson. But as you said, pictures have appeared on social media. Just while you were talking, I had a look, and you're quite right. There are a couple of pictures on social media of what appears to be, well, it is the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Doria Ragland in a yellow taxi in New York. And that does raise questions about the couple's security, given, the battle that Prince Harry is having at the moment in the court about security when he comes to the UK. We have heard the couple talk at length about the security measures they've had to put in place living in the United States and how they self-fund that, but it's, for the protection of them and their family. It does raise a couple of question marks as to how they thought they may leave an awards ceremony in a yellow cab.
It certainly does, especially somewhere like Manhattan, which is not known for its free-flowing traffic, even if it was late at night. I think there would be security experts perhaps questioning why they were taking a taxi, why they didn't have a bigger convoy arranged. Certainly when, I think one of the last times we saw Meghan and Harry in the UK, which was back in September, the week the Queen died, actually, the very start of that week, they appeared in Manchester together. They certainly weren't getting taxis when they were travelling around Manchester. I remember very clearly that they had a convoy of cars. The route itself wasn't known. They weren't giving any details as to where they were staying. There was a lot of secrecy around that, and even the entrance into the building they were going to take. Obviously, that was a while ago. Things have changed slightly, but I think, I can't imagine we'll see them getting into a yellow cab again if this is the situation they'll be facing, and perhaps bigger questions as to why they didn't have security with them, telling them that this was not the best idea, that there were alternatives. However, they obviously weren't expecting the chase that happened as soon as they got in that taxi. But yeah, as I say, they won't be getting a yellow cab again, I'm certain. But a very unsettling way to find that out, perhaps. And I don't know where their security would have been if they were sat in the car with them. We just don't know at the moment.
Laura, I'm just going to bring our viewers again that statement, if people are just joining us, from Prince Harry's spokesperson regarding that incident in New York. It said last night the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms Ragland were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. That's literally all the detail we have at the moment. Laura Bundock, our royal correspondent, is on the line with me now to talk about this. And you know, the first thing that happened when I read this out, and the first reaction I got from our viewers, Laura, on social media and in our inbox, is the echoes of what happened to Prince Harry's mother, Diana. And I would imagine that may be part of the reasoning behind why Prince Harry has put this statement out.
Yes, I think so. I think he will want to draw attention to this, and he will want to remind people very clearly what of the pressures they face as a couple, and how this is dangerous, and how damaging and very, very dangerous it is to them. I think the way they were trying to get the photos of them in a taxi goes beyond what anyone would expect, any normal person would expect, and clearly should never come at the price of someone's safety as they're trying to drive away and leave an event. And this relentless pursuing of them has these awful echoes, doesn't it, of Diana. And we know that that's something Harry knew growing up, that she faced the whole time. Whenever she left her house, whenever she went out and about, he sat in the car with her as she tried to escape them. He wrote about it in Spare, of her having to run through red lights because they were chasing her there, and as she stopped at the lights, they'd be jumping in front of the car, trying to take photos of her, trying to take photos of him sat in the back. He knows what it's like, and this is exactly what he doesn't want for his own family. We know he's very protective, understandably, of Meghan and their 2 children. We don't really see much of their children. And I think something like this to happen that is compromising their safety in such a dangerous way, when they had gone out to an awards ceremony for Meghan to pick up an award, an event that was meant to be a moment of celebration, to end up in something this dangerous, will be something he will be very upset and concerned about, no doubt, as well.
Laura, thank you. Laura Bundock there, our royal correspondent. I'm going to go to our US correspondent now, James Matthews, to talk about this breaking news. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the Duchess of Sussex's mother, Doria Ragland, involved in what's being described as a relentless pursuit that lasted over 2 hours by paparazzi after an award ceremony in New York last night. James, what are you hearing in Washington?
Yeah, the details are still coming in, Sarah Jane, of course, but this was an event last night, Women in Vision, that was attended by Prince Harry, Meghan Markle and her mother. Now, she was being honoured for championing human rights and for gender equality, as well as being an advocate, according to the organisation, for women and girls through her humanitarian and business ventures. It is nothing new for Harry and Meghan to go to occasions such as this in New York. I was at one in December where they were both being honoured, and it is very much an operation of cat and mouse with the media. There is media that wants pictures of them on the way, en route, on the way into the building, in the building itself, and they are reluctant, invariably, to offer such an image. And what's happened this time is that all 3 went in the back door to the building via a Hertz rental car office. So there was clearly a degree of trying to keep some distance between themselves and paparazzi in pursuit. I mean, Harry in particular, is news at the moment in the wake of the coronation. There is a monetary value on images of him and indeed of the couple, particularly at this time. They are hot news, to coin a phrase. In terms of what actually happened in terms of the pursuit itself, that's all coming from Harry and Meghan's spokesman. And, as you've heard in this statement that's been issued, they call it a relentless pursuit. It lasted over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions. They don't say crashes, but it involved other drivers on the road. I mean, there are many roads, small and large, and extremely busy between any airport that they would use upon arrival and departure in New York, having flown in from California. We know they are particularly sensitive to car chases. We saw that in the Netflix documentary with Harry and Meghan. There was a scene in which they appeared from the cameras inside their vehicle to be pursued by a cameraman or a camera. We never saw that camera, but it clearly put them on edge. And Meghan Markle in particular was seen to be very anxious at the presence nearby of chasing press. One thing to point out, Sarah Jane, is that this incident, such as has been described by Harry and Meghan's spokesman, it comes in the wake of Harry reopening the legal case in an effort to enable him to pay for police protection in the UK. He's not been allowed to do that. A court has ruled that, has sided with the Home Office in terms of not allowing him access to police protection or the ability to pay for police protection in the UK. He has gone back to court to appeal against that ruling. He's taking the Home Office to court in an effort to say, I deserve police protection and I deserve the right legally to pay for it. So that is going on in the background. This incident happens not long after that particular appeal has reopened in the UK courts. But, much detail remains to come out. And one imagines is if this was a chase over 2 hours, it won't just be the spokesman for Harry and Meghan that we will hear from. There must have been many eyewitnesses to such a car chase, particularly if there were near collisions. There would have been participants in the chase, if indeed it was a chase. So one imagines we will hear from them in due course. And that really is where it stays at the moment. In terms of hard news, it's coming from the spokesman of Harry and Meghan, calling it a relentless car chase, something, of course, to which both are extremely sensitive. I mean, Prince Harry has been very public about his resentment and anger towards the media at the media's involvement, as he sees it, in the death of his mother in Paris all those years ago, which was, of course, as a result of a car chase through the streets of the French capital.
James, for the moment, thank you. I just want to bring you some pictures we have of the event that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex attended last night. Meghan picking up an award. You can see there Meghan's mother, Doria, on the red carpet with the couple as well. It was after this event that this relentless chase, as it's been called, relentless pursuit happened that lasted over 2 hours. This is the Duchess of Sussex arriving in New York at the gala to accept her award. I'll bring you the statement again because we've had a bit more detail added to it. It says last night the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms Ragland were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit lasting over 2 hours resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. While being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the way in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. A statement there from the spokesperson for Prince Harry. Let's bring in Ashna Hiranag, who's following this story for us from the newsroom. So that is the statement in its entirety as we have it, Ashna. Not much detail, but it gives you an insight into the seriousness in the eyes of the Sussexes of what happened, and also a warning that what happened shouldn't happen again.
It does. Over 2 hours is what it says in its statement, and you get the impression that they are incredibly shaken up, as you would be if you were being pursued in the way in which this statement comes across. We understand that in that vehicle was Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and his wife Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and also her mother, so Harry's mother-in-law, Doria Ragland, who, as you saw in those photographs there, were photographed on the red carpet. This was a Vision Award ceremony that Meghan was attending. She was picking up one of those awards. She gave a speech last night. This was an event that's being held in Manhattan in New York, and we have seen photos, as we've just seen on our screens, of them arriving, but then there were some photographs taken of them leaving the event as well. It appears to show, some of them on social media at least, Meghan and Harry and her mother stepping into a yellow taxi, a yellow New York taxi, leaving that awards ceremony. Of course, it's worth reminding ourselves at this point perhaps that they are financially independent. They look after their own security, they bring in their own security, and it didn't look like they were travelling in any form of convoy, as it were, as they would have been used to doing here in the UK. But this pursuit, it sounds like it was relentless, and they talk in that statement about how this relentless pursuit lasted over 2 hours, and dissemination of the images that were taken, given that the way in which it was obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that's dangerous to all involved. It makes it seem as though perhaps there were just numerous flashes from those photographers, those paparazzi that were following them and dangerously following them in the way in which has been described. And if they were travelling at high speed, plus those flashes that were going on, it must have been an incredibly terrifying experience for all three of them, and let alone the driver of that vehicle as well. At the moment, we don't know where they are, and we also don't know their condition. Understandably, they're probably incredibly shaken up by this, but as James Matthews was touching upon there, Sarah Jane, given that there were these near misses and near collisions involving other drivers on the road and pedestrians, and also near collisions with the NYPD, the New York Police Department officers, perhaps we can expect a statement from their point of view, or even statements from others who may have witnessed this car chase. But given that this was an event that they were attending all together, yesterday it was an incredibly happy event. Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, was picking up an award, to then have their evening ending in this way last night. Clearly they are just waking up in the States. It's very early in the morning over there, and clearly they have just realised the danger in which they were in, and felt the need to release a statement like this.
Ashna, thank you. Yes, if the couple are still in New York, it's around 11:15 in the morning. If they've already returned to California, it's around 7:45. So early in terms of the United States. This story, more details, we anticipate to come out throughout the course of the day. I want to bring in now former Royal Protection Officer Simon Morgan. Simon, thank you for jumping on the line to speak to us about what has happened. You'll have heard the short statement and the detail that's in it. Can you give us your impression of what unfolded for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex last night?
Good afternoon, Sarah Jane. Yes, I mean, I think it's an alarming development from the security perspective, and certainly when we look back in history concerning the Duke's mother, then we know the way that tragedy unfolded. So I think it's most probably extremely alarming and distressing for them. But I think there's going to have to be an investigation, maybe from NYPD, as to what support mechanisms their security team was able to draw upon when they were there, if any, and what a duration of a car chase of 2 hours in this scenario just seems a very long time with no intervention at some point to me.
Simon, we know that Prince Harry no longer has royal protection. In fact, he's part of an ongoing court case trying to get his right to pay for police protection when he comes to the UK. But they do have private security in the United States. They've been very open about that. How does that differ from royal protection? What will have been involved on a night like last night, such a high-profile event with, one of the most famous couples in the world?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at two slightly different scenarios, whether that takes place here in London or indeed in the US. If we look at the US scenario, then you'll be working in conjunction with the Secret Service, you'd be working in conjunction with NYPD, and they would be adding the support mechanisms to royalty protection and the officers that are deployed overseas. A lot more recce's would be involved, a lot more of the planning phase. But certainly, even now in the private sector where we work, we always look to work hand in glove with law enforcement, because that's something that we need the support of, whether that be an intelligence piece, not necessarily any form of physical support, but sometimes just a contact number, should we have any issues that we need a law enforcement involvement. So it's something that the security team no doubt will have a look at to see whether they got those right. But, as you alluded to, the Duke started his legal case again against the Home Office and the Metropolitan Police Service in relation to his perceived right that he could possibly buy Metropolitan Police officers on the protection front when he kind of comes into the UK. So it's a rather timely event that highlights some of the risks.
Yeah. Simon, just to be clear, if Prince Harry was still within the royal family in that security sense, what kind of security would we have seen on the streets of New York? Would we have seen roads closed off, some kind of NYPD escort? I'm just trying to get a sense of what help they would have got last night, because it sounds like it's different if you are Prince Harry within the royal family rather than Prince Harry as he is at the moment, an outlier.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the way protection is delivered here in the UK by the police service is vastly different to presidential style security. So, the large grand closures of roads and lots of police officers is something that we always used to try and avoid. You want to try and be as flexible in your movements as possible. But because it was a pre-planned event, then you're going to have some of that process part there, and you're certainly going to see a protected convoy with motorcycle outriders, certainly moving you away from that particular event and getting you to the next venue. So you would have seen things slightly different, slightly more structured. So therefore, when you take that away, and like you said, Prince Harry now being in the private sector, working with a private security team, then that is going to look far different, because they're not going to be able to tap into those resources. But nonetheless, in the private sector, we always look to work with law enforcement, and just get a handle on that event. And even if it's going to be a case of, look, we're having problems, is there a number that we can dial into? Because then, law enforcement do have a responsibility, a duty of care as an ordinary citizen, not just as a prince of this country, but as an ordinary citizen to support them if they feel that their life is under threat from whatever the circumstances. And certainly when you look at this, yes, there could have been a threat to life purely because of the driving, the difficulty the driver may have had. And obviously if this is a New York taxi driver, then he certainly must probably not used to that level of intrusion and difficulty with his driver.
In terms of life as a royal protection officer, I would imagine when you take on that role, your first mission is to protect the royals from harm, people who set out to physically harm them. This whole paparazzi game is a whole other area, isn't it, in terms of they're not intent on harm, but, the side product of what they are doing can cause harm. Can you give me an idea of what it's like to be protecting somebody who is surrounded by vehicles? I've got visions of, cars running red lights, driving while taking pictures, trying to block your car to stop it so they can take pictures. Can you give me any idea of what that's like? Not just for, say the Duke and Duchess of Sussex involved, but for the team around them trying to protect them.
It is an extremely difficult scenario. And, I always say that if we don't learn from history, then we're failing to learn. So, you've got to put these mitigations in place, but you can't also get sidetracked. This individual is going to take a photograph of you when there are other people that are out there that wishing to do you harm. But it's actually the whole circumstances, and it is the circumstances that you have described, whereby people are blocking your car in, people are trying to take photos, pursuing you on bikes, they are jumping red lights, they are driving across the pavements to get that picture. And therefore it becomes not just a safety issue for your principal, but it also becomes a public safety issue, because the very fact that you're there is now creating this very difficult public safety environment. And like I said, we have to look back at history, and we know that the tragedy that unfolded in Paris was because of those very actions.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. Simon Morgan, former Royal Protection Officer there, just talking us through, some of the circumstances that are involved in protecting royals and other high-profile individuals, particularly where paparazzi are involved. Simon, thank you very much for your insight. Just want to run you through what we know so far this afternoon with regard to this breaking news. Harry and Meghan involved in a paparazzi chase last night in New York. A statement from Prince Harry's spokesperson says last night the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms Ragland were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. While being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the ways in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. Well, let's just bring you pictures we have of the event. That's the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, along with her mother, who is there on the left of the picture, Doria Ragland. It was a red carpet event, a gala in New York, where the Duchess of Sussex was picking up an award in New York. These are pictures we have of them arriving at the event. Just to warn you that the next set of pictures we're going to show you involve flash photography. So this is the event. As you can see, so much attention on the couple. That's because it's the first public appearance of Harry and Meghan since Prince Harry's autobiography was published. That seems like a long time ago now. And of course, since the King's coronation, Meghan picking up an award at the Foundation for Women's annual gala. It recognised her global advocacy to empower and advocate on behalf of women and girls. Well, let's cross live now to our US correspondent, James Matthews. James, I've just brought our viewers the statement once again. It is very short on detail, but it very much underlines the seriousness of the situation the Sussexes felt they were in last night.
Yeah, that's certainly their view. They think that there was reckless endangerment over a period of some 2 hours. This event, Jane, was taking place in the Ziegfeld Ballroom. That's Midtown Manhattan, very busy area, just a block and a bit away from Trump Tower. So talk of a 2-hour chase, that would tally with a trip to and from the airport, perhaps, although my understanding is they were staying at a private residence. So quite where their journey started and ended, we're not entirely sure. In terms of what was going on during this pursuit by paparazzi, I'm led to believe, or we're led to believe, that it involved around half a dozen vehicles blacked out, and there's no doubt in the Harry and Meghan party that their convoy was being endangered by behaviour which included going the wrong way down a one-way street, running red lights. I suppose typical paparazzi pursuit, speaking on the phone while driving, taking pictures whilst on the move. We're led to believe that the NYPD did at some point step in, but that didn't appear to stop the pursuit of paparazzi. It's our understanding there is footage that was taken by Harry and Meghan's security of what went on. It will be interesting to see that, and that will reflect a reality of what went on, or certainly provide confirmation of what is being claimed at this stage. Because, this happened over something like 2 hours, we're told. There would have been a lot of people, a lot of cameras, a lot of participants in that very chase, all of whom we have yet to hear from. So that kind of confirmation would reinforce the claims that are being made, bearing in mind the cynicism generally that surrounds Harry and Meghan. That will feed into this story and add ballast to what we're being told in that statement, which talks about reckless endangerment and a pursuit of Harry and Meghan through the streets of Manhattan. So, you know, we are no further forward in terms of the hard evidence to buttress those claims until we get more from the Harry and Meghan camp. But they are in no doubt that people were endangered, that they were endangered by a pursuit by paparazzi in New York last night.
It's just gone 4 o'clock. We're talking about the breaking news this afternoon that Prince Harry, his wife Meghan, and her mother have been involved in what Harry's spokesperson has called a near catastrophic car chase involving paparazzi. Just to warn you that there are flashing images in the footage we are about to bring you. Now, we understand that the incident happened after the couple attended an awards ceremony in New York last night, their first public appearance together since the King's coronation. Well, Prince Harry's spokesperson said in a statement last night the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms Ragland were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. While being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the ways in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. Well, let's bring in our correspondent Ashna Huranag, who is following this story from the newsroom for us. Ashna, short on detail, but it really does underline the seriousness of the situation the Sussexes felt they were in last night.
Yeah, an incredible amount of danger, it sounds like, too. I mean, the relentless pursuit line speaks to that relentless pressure that there is to see Harry and Meghan, photographs of them at any particular event. We have heard in the last few minutes, Sarah Jane, from Omid Scobie, who's tweeted the couples how they are, essentially. He is a biographer and author that has written the book on Harry and Meghan called Finding Freedom a couple of years ago. He has attributed this to a source close to the Sussexes. He has said that Harry, Meghan and Doria, that's Meghan's mother, are understandably shaken but thankful everyone is safe. The three of them had been attending this gala in Manhattan. This was the Woman of Vision Award, and Meghan was picking up one of those awards last night. She also gave a speech on stage. She'd been encouraging women to fight for equality as she accepted this award. And there had been photographs of them that were taken as they arrived for that ceremony, and also once they'd left through the front door once again and got into those vehicles. It's understood that they were then, as this statement says, relentlessly pursued in what the spokesperson for the couple says was a near catastrophic car chase involving paparazzi. The exact number of vehicles involved in this pursuit is unknown, but we understand that around half a dozen were involved in following this couple. And you've got a sense there from the flash photography of the couple walking into those, or going back down the red carpet and into those vehicles, the ripple of flashes that followed them. It gives you a sense of perhaps what they may have experienced on their journey back from that gala last night. This was Meghan's first public appearance for a while, and you know, there is that huge interest in both of them, and they acknowledge, the couple, that there is this heightened level of tension on both of them when they do attend these public events. But any person would acknowledge the fact that these photos should never come at a price of someone's safety, something which is acknowledged in that statement that they have released, that, as you say, is short but is powerful nonetheless, because it gives such scant detail but quite shocking detail to people that are reading it this morning. The couple, we understand, may have spent the night in New York, but then perhaps are waking up this morning in California. And as I say, the biographer of Meghan and Harry, Omid Scobie, who has written a book called Finding Freedom on the couple, has said that a source close to the Sussexes, a source close to Meghan and Harry, and also Meghan's mother, who was with them last night, says they are understandably shaken but thankful everyone is safe.
Let's bring in our US correspondent, James Matthews, who's following the story from the US. The pictures you see on your screen right now are from the gala attended by the couple last night, along with Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland. The trio had been at the Ms. Foundation for Women's 50th anniversary gala, which honours game-changing and visionary leaders. Meghan was picking up an award. She received the Women of Vision Award, recognising her global advocacy to empower and advocate on behalf of women and girls. James, just looking at these happy pictures here of the couple, the night obviously didn't end with such big smiles by the sounds of it, because they went through what is being described by Prince Harry's spokesperson as quite the ordeal. It lasted 2.5 hours. And I must admit, as I was reading out the statement live on air, people were getting in touch fearing the worst, because, of course, there are such echoes of Prince Harry's mother and what happened to her in 1997.
Yes, yeah, and many of us remember where we were on that night in 1997. Sarah Jane, I was walking in the middle of the night and in Balmoral when, you'll remember, William and Harry, as young children, came out, walked along the line of flowers, tributes to their mothers. Two of them really barely looked like they knew what was going on, ashen-faced, confronting or facing a nation in the days after they had lost their nearest and dearest. So that was a shocking event, a shocking car pursuit through the streets of Paris, and a moment of shame for all concerned. And of course, therein lie the roots of Harry's hatred, resentment, anger towards the media that he believes cost him and his family their mother. He's carried that through life, and that's been laid bare by him publicly on a number of occasions. So when we hear about a pursuit, recklessness, potentially catastrophic, words like that used by his spokesman in relation to a car chase through the busy streets of New York, then, one does feel concern. One feels sympathy and an empathy with him for that kind of situation. I think, given Harry and Meghan's history and their public profile, I think it will be useful to bolster the credibility of what we're hearing in the statement from his spokesperson. And there's every indication that we will get additional evidence to buttress the claims that we are being told about, because we're told there is evidence that was taken by their security of what was going on over the course of 2 hours and more in this alleged car chase. My understanding is that there were around half a dozen blacked out vehicles involved in this, and the information we have about their behaviour relates to, breaking traffic rules, going the wrong way up a one-way street, running a red light, speaking on the phone, taking pictures whilst on the move. So it was clearly not ideal, and it was, if that is the case, it was unsafe and unacceptable. New York is a busy place. There is a lot of bad driving that goes on in New York. I think what Harry and Meghan and their spokespeople, who work with the media and know how the media works and know the layer of cynicism that surrounds Harry and Meghan, in the UK perhaps more than elsewhere, they will know the importance of being able to add credibility to these claims so that the public at large can make a judgment on words like potential catastrophe, recklessness, relentless pursuit, so that the public at large can make a judgment and assessment of how much danger was posed to Harry and Meghan themselves and to others on the streets of New York. My understanding is that at some point NYPD officers did step in to try to provide some kind of obstacle to those that were in pursuit, but that didn't stop them chasing the picture of Harry and Meghan. So they say they were personally endangered. That will be a question that to which there is no credible or to which there is not an answer that is backed up by the evidence at this stage. Perhaps the footage filmed by their security will give us a sense of how much they were personally impacted by this car chase. You know, how much was it bad driving, stupid, relentless, unacceptable driving by people chasing them? How much and to what extent were they personally endangered? That's what the message we're getting very clearly by a spokesperson for Harry and Meghan. One imagines that in due course, given that they do have evidence, that's my understanding, one imagines we'll see that evidence. But there's no question that they were clearly shaken up by this. It's something they are particularly sensitive to, given the history, given Princess Diana, Paris, the car crash, the fatal car crash. We saw evidence of their anxiety in this kind of situation in their Netflix documentary, didn't we? When there was a camera inside a vehicle. It was in the UK, as I recall. It was from the airport to somewhere else, and they were anxious. Meghan was particularly anxious about a paparazzi or a camera that they had spotted and that seemed to be in pursuit. We didn't see the camera, but we saw how they reacted to being pursued, being chased by the media. They are particularly sensitive to the media. I might say they're well able to handle the media in controlled situations. They were in the Ziegfeld Ballroom in Midtown Manhattan last night, just around the corner from Trump Tower, not far from the Hilton in Midtown Manhattan. I was there last December when they were being lauded by a particular organisation. Harry was giving a speech, and it was a red carpet event. There was no sign of them going inside. Of course, you go to these events and the media, and we're no exception, we want pictures of them. So camera outside the building, waiting for their arrival, camera inside, looking for them inside, hoping to grab a few words with them. In that situation last December, there was no sign of them outside the building. They were taken in a side door, all very private, away from the eyes of the paparazzi. It's the paparazzi who tend to be lurking at the doors of these hotel buildings, because what happens is that you have accredited media. So last night in the Ziegfeld Ballroom, there would have been accredited media lining up by the red carpet, ready for controlled pictures of Harry and Meghan, which is fine. That makes them money. They can sell these pictures. The paparazzi, who are not accredited, often freelance photographers, nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're still photographers, very much masters of their trade, but their trade without accreditation is waiting at the door because they've not been accredited by the organisers. Their picture has to come outside the building. So they're looking for arrival shots, Harry and Meghan on the move shots. And they, much of the time, actually are the more lucrative images because they are in uncontrolled situations. They are caught off guard, and that, as an image, can be more striking. It can be the image that fits better onto a magazine or newspaper front page. Therefore, it earns more money for the photographer concerned and for the publication that carries the image. So that's the way it works. Harry and Meghan, there is to a large degree an avoidance of media out with controlled situations. Once they're inside, when I saw them last December on the red carpet, they were very much in control of their environment. Harry looking very relaxed and in front of a very loud, quite aggressive press mob, and that's the accredited media inside this controlled situation. It was in the wake of a big news event related to his family, so there was a question to be asked and an answer perhaps to be delivered by him. He knew that. There was a loud press, but he seemed quite capable of managing the media at that particular time, and I was in a crowd of something like 30-odd media, and he is aided, of course, by, and he and she are aided by organisers and their own security protection in these buildings. It is when they get out, when they're on their way, and when they're on their way in, and when they are on their way out. That is when the private security and everyone around them, and they themselves don't have the same kind of control. That environment, New York City, a busy place, busy roads. Unless you close off these roads, you wait at traffic lights, you jockey for position along with everybody else in the streets of New York, and the roads of New York are, pretty reckless and dangerous at the best of times, with half a dozen blacked out vehicles in pursuit. And that clearly would have increased the kind of danger and sense of anxiety. Let me just tell you something that we are being told, Sarah Jane. TMZ, as they call themselves here, are they're saying this, a news organisation: at some point during the chase, an SUV pulled over and the trio jumped into a New York taxi and beat a hasty retreat. It looks like the police tried to outwit the paparazzi by driving in a different direction than the taxi. So that's interesting. That's TMZ are saying that. At some point during this chase, the SUV, big vehicle in which they were, Harry, Meghan and Meghan's mum, TMZ are saying that it pulled over and the three of them jumped into a taxi and beat a hasty retreat. It looks like TMZ are saying that having jumped in the taxi, that went one way and the convoy went the other. A common tactic used by the authorities and security to try to give the media, give the paparazzi the slip in New York. So that's interesting. The Telegraph are reporting, Daily Telegraph, they're reporting that the trio took refuge in a police station to change taxis. That's what the Telegraph are saying, and that's interesting. When I read about the first thing about the taxi, the question is, well, how did they get in a taxi without the paparazzi seeing that they'd gone into a taxi and chasing that taxi? According to the Telegraph, they took refuge in a police station unseen, away from the eyes of the paparazzi, and then that taxi would have left, leaving the paparazzi chasing a convoy without Harry, Meghan and Meghan's mum. So these are early reports. It's all very early. It was only something like 45 minutes ago that Harry and Meghan's spokesperson put out this statement, Jane. So gradually we are putting together the pieces of the jigsaw. And there are many pieces yet to be put in place. Pieces of the jigsaw that will be in the possession of many people, because this was 2 hours. There were paparazzi involved, there were cameras involved, there was NYPD involved, and there were members of the public involved. We are led to believe that security footage was being taken by Harry and Meghan's security detail. So all these individuals have the opportunity to provide their first-hand eyewitness evidence to what went on. And one imagines that from many, if not most, we will get that. And the question will be, how does Harry and Meghan's story tally with the story of others who were watching on? That is of interest because it's of interest in the story of Harry and Meghan, a story that is surrounded by cynicism. Let's be honest about it. And there will be many saying, well, okay, you're saying X, let's see the evidence to back up your story. And people will be pointing, I suppose, to a court case that took place, or a court hearing that took place not a couple of days ago in the UK courts. Harry has taken the Home Office to court. The Home Office, you'll remember, is not allowing him police protection, the ability to buy police protection when he comes to the UK. He's not happy about that, to the extent he's gone to court to try to overturn that. He's appealing against that. He wants the ability to pay for police security whilst in the UK. So that's where we are at the moment, Sarah Jane. No response from the NYPD. They're saying nothing officially on the matter at all. Nothing to that most recent report by the Telegraph that during the chase, the three of them sought refuge in a police station to change into a taxi. That's what the Telegraph are saying. TMZ are saying that they jumped out of the vehicle they were in to get into a taxi and give the paparazzi the slip.
James, thank you. Yeah, that ties into what we've been seeing. We have got moving footage of the couple leaving that gala in New York last night and getting into a big black four-wheel drive. And then obviously there are pictures circulating on social media of them in a New York taxi. A lot of eyebrows raised as to why they on earth would have got into a taxi in New York, but that may well explain how the evening unfolded for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Let's just remind you of the statement we had in earlier this afternoon. Prince Harry spokesperson saying last night the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms Ragland, that's Meghan's mother, were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. While being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the way in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. Well, this is how yesterday evening started for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, red carpet event, a gala in New York, Meghan being given an award. This is pictures of the couple arriving at that event. This is the couple leaving that event, and it was as they were leaving that this 2.5 hour, as we've been told, pursuit started. Just to let you know that the next batch of images we're going to bring you do contain flash photography, so just to warn you about that. This is the Duke and Duchess of Sussex leaving. You can just see the level of press attention. As James Matthews was saying, there is accredited media inside that gala to take those official photos on the red carpet, but then of course paparazzi outside the event waiting for those unofficial photos of the couple. And it's understood that those paparazzis continued to follow the Duke and Duchess of Sussex as they left the event. Well, joining us now, Dr. Tessa Dunlop, royal historian and author of Elizabeth and Philip. Really good of you to join us this afternoon to react to this story. First of all, your initial thoughts when you heard this breaking news a little earlier.
It's extraordinary. It's a sort of immediate emotional U-turn. One minute you're looking at exquisite photographs of a woman in vision, a ward, a beautiful gold dress, Doria Ragland looking exquisite, also age 67, and feeling kind of slightly joyous for the couple. It's not been an easy ride, and there they are putting on a show in New York, and then suddenly this grotesque, really, echo to the past. Harry's mother in 1997, how can any of us ever forget, came to a sticky demise with paparazzi in pursuit of her vehicle. Understandably, we haven't had the sources verified. We don't know or haven't had details confirmed of exactly what happened. NYPD were involved. It sounds deeply unpleasant, and I'm sure for Harry involved in it was a massive trigger. We know from his book, he went to visit the said tunnel where his mother lost his life in 2007. And this will be redolent of really the most formative and gruesome period in his childhood. And I think it's understandable. I know already I've heard other channels question, oh, can you really have a car chase in New York for that long? I'm absolutely sure that no matter how long the car chase was for, it felt far too long from the point of view of the prince with the woman or the two women who he loves dearly in the vehicle with him. So I have great sympathy with them, and it seems a terrible way to end a rather successful night.
You'll have heard the statement. It is short, but it is very to the point. And reading between the lines, there is no doubt in the Duke and Duchess's minds that, near catastrophic. They believe that it could have been fatal.
Any collision has the potential to be fatal. Cars are fatal, potentially. And I think that it's a salient reminder that, and Harry will have been very aware of this, and I'm sure it's one of the reasons why he's taking the case against Britain's Home Office and his own security over here, that he is always going to be a target of interest between the two.
Statement from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They said,
emotional U-turn. One minute you're looking at exquisite photographs of a woman in vision, a ward, a beautiful gold dress, Doria Raglan looking exquisite, also age 67, and feeling kind of slightly joyous for the couple. It's not been an easy ride, and there they are putting on a show in New York, and then suddenly this grotesque, really, echo to the past. Harry's mother in 1997, how can any of us ever forget, came to a sticky demise with paparazzi in pursuit of her vehicle. Understandably, we haven't had the sources verified. We don't know or haven't had details confirmed of exactly what happened. NYPD were involved. It sounds deeply unpleasant, and I'm sure for Harry involved in it was a massive trigger. We know from his book, he went to visit the said tunnel where his mother lost his life in 2007, and this will be redolent of really the most formative and gruesome period in his childhood. And I think it's understandable. I know already I've heard other channels question, oh, can you really have a car chase in New York for that long? I'm absolutely sure that no matter how long the car chase was for, it felt far too long from the point of view of the prince with the woman or the two women who he loves dearly in the vehicle with him. So I have great sympathy with them, and it seems a terrible way to end a rather successful night.
You'll have heard the statement. It is short, but it is very to the point. And reading between the lines, there is no doubt in the Duke and Duchess's minds that, near catastrophic. They believe that it could have been fatal.
Any collision has the potential to be fatal. Cars are fatal, potentially. And I think that it's a salient reminder that, and Harry will have been very aware of this, and I'm sure it's one of the reasons why he's taking the case against Britain's Home Office and his own security over here, that he is always going to be a target of interest. Between the two of them, they're far greater than the sum of their parts, and they attract staggering quantities of column inches. SJ, you and I, on the front line of journalism, know that. And people could say, oh, well, look, they fueled it. They've written their memoir, they've done their Netflix. Well, so be it. I've written a memoir of sorts. We are daily in public view, but we don't expect to be chased to the point of collision in a city in America. I don't think that one should ever equal the other. And I think there is a case in point here about treatment of public figures and the line between what is and what isn't acceptable in the way in which we report them. It's also a reminder that as a celebrity, no matter how much you try and curate your story and control it yourself, once you're in the public domain, you're never fully in control.
And they reference that in their statement, don't they? They reference the way in which these images were obtained and how it is, very intrusive. The message in that is that this should not be happening. I'm interested in what you said there about celebrities and high-profile figures, because, this kind of paparazzi interest in the royals is a new thing. I mean, you think about the paparazzi in America and you think of, we've all seen those images, particularly replayed in recent years, of Britney Spears and the likes, being chased around the Hollywood Hills by cars, put in dangerous situations to get that unguarded photograph. And it's since the Diana era that this has turned onto the royals. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, some might call it the celebritization of the royals. The difference was there was a pact, if you like, between the Fourth Estate and the royal family. You see in the last 150 years, they've become our first family, that become popular monarchy rather than political monarchy. And that requires a relationship with the press because one fuels the other. But, I mean, even in the Queen's young life, there were times when there was a feeling that the press had overstepped the mark, for instance, in the coverage of her honeymoon down in Broadlands estate, where people crashed into the cathedral or the abbey where they were enjoying a service, and they felt hounded. But of course, every time the media kind of steps it up a gear, we don't just have 24/7 media now, we have 24/7 social media. Everyone is curating their own narratives. In a sense, it's become impossible to avoid it. And so therefore the idea that you have people born into a goldfish bowl, which is what Harry was, and people might say, well, he's lent into that. But yeah, but that was his training. His life's training was to be a prince, a public figure. So he's lent into that training. But actually, there are no boundaries now. And previously, there were boundaries between what the press had access to and what the private royal family were allowed to consider their own narrative. And I think that's become very blurred. And it's also a bit like whack-a-mole. Okay, let's have, after Diana or something, an incident happens, let's, review the way the press behaves in Britain. But of course, this is a global story. They are global personalities. And the British press doesn't, incidentally, just source its stories from Britain. We know that. I mean, which paparazzi and which agencies were they feeding those men and women who were pursuing the couple, if indeed they were, last night?
You say it's an impossible situation. Prince Harry has been very public in fighting for, tackling unlawful and intrusive practices by the press. He is very vocal about that. He's actually in the High Court fighting it at the moment. I was just interested in you using the word impossible there. Is this something that won't change? I mean, every time we talk about an incident involving an intrusion of the press that ruins a life, can sometimes be fatal, we talk about a line being drawn. That's it. Things have to get better. And, just looking at what's unfolding this afternoon, you wonder if that will ever be the case.
I mean, you make a very good point. And it's interesting. I hadn't curated what I was going to say. That was a spontaneous use of the word impossible, but it does feel a bit like a double bind. That on the one hand, it's his crusade against the paps, quote unquote. This is his lifetime's work, or one of them. He's decided to take on malpractice. You're right. He's in the court at the moment against MGM Group. And of course, we know there are other big names besides them. But the point is that it's a multi-million-dollar global industry. So, and this goes beyond national borders. So you can fight one group in one country, but elsewhere, the narrative unfolds in a different fashion. And of course, they all overlap. And what is incidentally formal, old school press, as you and I would refer to, and what is social media, websites, blogging, YouTube, people uploading on TikTok? Where does that boundary lie today? It's so much harder to control it. So actually, the juggernaut that is the Duchess, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and people lampoon them, I think often they get kind of beaten with the stick of, that after the money, that they're in for the big dollar. Well, they need it if they are also having to make sure and guarantee their own security. And last night is evidence of that. And I think it's understandable why a man of Harry's standing, born into the weird world that he was born into, actually feels that really in many ways should be his birthright to have that security whenever he comes back to Britain. And you can see why. He's clearly missing it in America, isn't he, at the moment? Being a celebrity of that standing, but the combination of Hollywood tinsel and old school British royalty, it's proved that it's got legs and that will run and run.
Yeah, the public interest in the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is increasing rather than decreasing. Whether that is something they want or something they don't want, that clearly seems to be the case. Dr. Tessa Dunlop, thank you very much indeed. Just reacting to this afternoon's breaking news, Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and Meghan's mother involved in an intense paparazzi chase after an awards ceremony in New York last night. Just to warn you that some of the pictures we're going to bring you do contain flash photography, so just to give you a heads up on that. But first, I'll bring you the statement that was released a little earlier. Prince Harry spokesperson saying last night the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms Ragland were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. While being a public figure comes with a level of public interest, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the ways in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. These are pictures of the event last night. These are taken before the couple left. These are pictures of them leaving, and it's after this departure from the hotel in New York that we understand the chase by paparazzi began. Just to warn you, this is the flash photography bit. Let's bring in our correspondent Ashna Hiranag. She's following the story for us in the newsroom. Let's just pick up on that last line of the statement. Dissemination of these images, given the ways in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. Having said that in the statement, it's interesting that none of these paparazzi pictures have appeared anywhere. We understand they may have appeared on a newspaper online site, but were quickly removed this morning after details of how they were obtained emerged.
You get the sense that these were images that were captured in an extremely dangerous scenario. We've got a little bit more information about exactly who may have been involved in this pursuit, Sarah Jane. The couple, we understand, may have been followed by around half a dozen blacked out vehicles which were being driven by unidentified people. Within that, there was likely that sea or that ripple of flash photography that is so common with events that any top-class celebrities attend, but let alone Harry and Meghan. The vehicles were said to have been driven on pavements. Some may have jumped red lights and reversed down a one-way street. It's also understood that at least one of the drivers was using their phone behind the wheel, and at least one other is said to have been photographing whilst driving. And one of the cars, it's also understood, may have illegally blocked a moving vehicle. There are some very, very early reports at this stage, it's worth saying, that perhaps the couple and Meghan's mother Doria were forced to change the vehicle they were travelling in. In the last images that we have of them up until this car chase happened, we see them moving down a red carpet and into a blacked out vehicle. There are some social media videos that show the couple then in a taxi, perhaps a yellow sort of New York cab, if you will, and it's some suggestion that they may have moved vehicles because of the intensity of this car chase. We understand also that they were hoping to spend the evening at a friend's house. This is Harry, Meghan and Doria, Meghan's mum, who was with her at that event. They were meant to spend the night at a private residence, but there is some suggestion that they didn't want to compromise that friend's home, so therefore had to make some quick changes to their plans. But you're right to pick up on the dissemination thought and whether these images are going to make it into the public domain. There's a strong suspicion that there's going to be a clampdown, and they absolutely will not be, and this is likely to be the only images we see of last night. Meghan there picking up an award, a Woman in Vision award. She had given a speech that night, and she'd received this award at this gala that was taking place in Manhattan in New York before this relentless pursuit, as was described by their spokesperson. There is some suggestion that there was footage that was filmed by their private security team during this car chase, which may corroborate, I suppose, the evidence that's in this statement. It'll be interesting to see whether we get sight of some of that footage that was taken by their private security team. Worth saying that they did have private security team team with them, as we understand it. Of course, since leaving their roles as senior royals, that's something they've had to financially secure themselves in an independent manner. But as I say, there is this suggestion that about half a dozen vehicles were involved in this car chase yesterday. It is worth saying that according to the couple's biographer, Omid Scobie, he has quoted and attributed this to a source close to the Sussexes, that Harry, Meghan and Doria are understandably shaken, but thankful that everyone is safe. And we were hearing there from royal historian Dr. Tessa Dunlop, and she mentioned something that was quite interesting, that perhaps this was an incredibly triggering thing for Prince Harry to have been involved in. He has spoken so much in the past about the trauma of life, growing up in front of the cameras, dodging them, desperately trying not to get in the way of any involvement with the paparazzi and trying to stay out of that public eye as much as he can. But there is the understanding, of course, that when you are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and you are attending such public events, there is this heightened level of attention, something that no doubt the couple would have been aware of. But it's the way in which these images were obtained which is clearly caused them such distress, but is also is being called into question. To what level is that pursuit okay? In this particular instance, it sounds incredibly distressing and incredibly intense, and it's described as being relentless, and it speaks to the relentless pressure, of course, that people go to try and get images of this couple. But it sounds like an incredibly terrifying incident for all three of them to have been involved in.
Ashna, thank you. Ashna Huranag following that story for us this afternoon. The breaking news that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the Duchess of Sussex's mother were involved in a near catastrophic car chase. Earlier on the programme, I spoke to a former Royal Protection Officer, Simon Morgan.
I think it's an alarming development from the security perspective, and certainly when we look back in history concerning the Duke's mother, then we know the way that tragedy unfolded. So I think it's most probably extremely alarming and distressing for them. But I think there's going to have to be an investigation, maybe from NYPD, as to what support mechanisms their security team was able to draw upon when they were there, if any, and what a duration of a car chase of 2 hours in this scenario just seems a very long time with no intervention at some point to me. You're looking at two slightly different scenarios, whether that takes place here in London or indeed in the US. If we look at the US scenario, then you'll be working in conjunction with the Secret Service, you'd be working in conjunction with NYPD, and they would be adding the support mechanisms to royalty protection and the officers that are deployed overseas. A lot more recce's would be involved, a lot more of the planning phase. But certainly, even now in the private sector where we work, we always look to work hand in glove with law enforcement, because that's something that we need the support of, whether that be an intelligence piece, not necessarily any form of physical support, but sometimes just a contact number, should we have any issues that we need a law enforcement involvement. So it's something that the security team no doubt will have a look at to see whether they got those right. But, as you alluded to, the Duke started his legal case again against the Home Office and the Metropolitan Police Service in relation to his perceived right that he could possibly buy Metropolitan Police officers on the protection front when he kind of comes into the UK. So it's a rather timely event that highlights some of the risks. The way protection is delivered here in the UK by the police service is vastly different to presidential style security. So, the large grand closures of roads and lots of police officers is something that we always used to try and avoid. You want to try and be as flexible in your movements as possible, but because it was a pre-planned event, then you're going to have some of that process part there, and you're certainly going to see a protected convoy with motorcycle outriders, certainly moving you away from that particular event and getting you kind of to the next venue. So you would have seen things slightly different, slightly more structured. So therefore, when you take that away, and like you said, Prince Harry now being in the private sector, working with a private security team, then that is going to look far different, because they're not going to be able to tap into those resources. But nonetheless, in the private sector, we always look to work with law enforcement, and just get a handle on that event. And even if it's going to be a case of, look, we're having problems, is there a number that we can dial into? Because then, law enforcement do have a responsibility, a duty of care as an ordinary citizen, not just as a prince of this country, but as an ordinary citizen to support them if they feel that their life is under threat from whatever the circumstances. And certainly when you look at this, yes, there could have been a threat to life purely because of the driving, the difficulty the driver may have had. And obviously if this is a New York taxi driver, then he certainly must probably not used to that level of intrusion and difficulty with his driver. It is an extremely difficult scenario. And, I always say that if we don't learn from history, then we're failing to learn. So, you've got to put these these mitigations in place, but you can't also get sidetracked. This individual is going to take a photograph of you when there are other people that are out there that wishing to do you harm. But it's actually the whole circumstances, and it is the circumstances that you have described, whereby people are blocking your car in, people are trying to take photos, pursuing you on bikes, they are jumping red lights, they are driving across the pavements to get that picture. And therefore it becomes not just a safety issue for your principal, but it also becomes a public safety issue, because the very fact that you're there is now creating this very difficult public safety environment. And like I said, we have to look back at history, and we know that the tragedy that unfolded in Paris was because of those very actions.
Well, these are pictures of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, at that event in New York last night. That was a red carpet picture. This is the couple leaving. You can see in the distance there the flash of a camera. Just to warn you that these pictures, a lot of flash photography. You can see so many paparazzi outside that event in New York to snap the couple as they leave, getting into that big people carrier, or is it 4x4? I can't quite tell, but it's a big vehicle anyway. We're led to believe that that is the original vehicle that paparazzi began to follow. There are then reports, we haven't verified them yet, but there are some reports that the couple took refuge in an New York police station, and it's from there that they then moved into a New York taxi.
Now that you have listened, you heard everything that has been said about what happened to Harry and Meghan in New York. Do you think they should have a more stronger security around them, and not try to want to be like everybody else? Because they can never be like anyone else, because of the position they are in the society. Or do you think they should keep trying this way in order to avoid this paparazzi? Let me know what you think. Or what do you think about this paparazzi in the first place? That they will go to any length to chase people because they want a picture of them. I just feel it's too risky for what they put people through. Some people through, not all celebrities go through this. So let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and click your notification button so that when next we're on, you'll be one of the people to be notified. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wherever you're joining me from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. See you next time. Bye-bye.